You guys, I'm sick. I'm sick. But my hair looks nice. Hey. Okay, actually, you know what? I'm too hot under this. I'm too hot under this. Hey guys, so this is... Hi. Welcome back to the book Nook. This was not the normal intro, but we'll go with it. So for today's video, I'm going to do my July haul part 2. So I'm just going to go through these in order that I bought them, because that's how I do. So on brand. So the first books that I bought, I am going to do together, because I bought volume 1 and volume 2 of Monstress graphic novels. So they are written by Marjorie Liu and illustrated by Sana Takeda. Now these graphic novels I'd heard a lot about on sort of booktube and things, and then one of my colleagues, colleague and friend Annabelle, read the first one when she was starting to get into graphic novels. So she started with Fables and then progressed on to Monstress, and she devoured these. So we had both of them in, so I bought them to add to my graphic novel collection. I haven't started them yet, I have been very tempted, and I know that one of the things Annabelle said is that with volume 1 you have to sort of give it a bit of time to get into it, because it sort of throws you into the middle of things and you're not quite sure what's going on. So I am excited to get started on these. I've got my graphic novel shelf up there, and I haven't forgotten the graphic novel video is going to happen. I know I've been talking about it since, pretty much since I started doing this booktube channel, but it is going to happen. So yeah, volume 1 and volume 2 of Monstress graphic novel series I picked up earlier in the month. So the next book I picked up is actually a book that I picked up due to recording Wexcast, which of course you guys will know is the podcast that I record for Waterstones Exeter. And every month we do, at the beginning of the month, we do a sort of wrap-up of the Waterstones books of the months and exciting releases, and then in the middle of the month I do a mid-month catch-up where I get as many of the booksellers as I can get on the episode to tell me what they're reading or what they're excited about. And Sam, I got on the podcast for the first time, and he told me about Nevernight by Kristoff. Now, I seem to remember seeing this one around BookTube a little while ago, and it's a sort of fantasy book about a girl who, when she's 10, she sees her parents killed in front of her, and then basically she goes off to train to be sort of an assassin and get revenge on the Empire that killed her parents. So there's a bit of sort of, it sounds to me a little bit sort of Star Warsy, a little bit Brandon Sanderson. So yeah, I was excited to give this one a go. And then when I was talking to someone else who read it, they said that the first 50 pages is quite like erotic fiction. And I was like, okay. And that person wasn't quite so sure about continuing reading it, but they stuck with it and they said it got really, really good. So yeah, as a sort of fantasy novel that I think the second book is out soon as well, so it's a new series, bit edgy. I think from the sounds of it, if you're fans of sort of like V. Schwab and Sarah J. Maas, this one might be one to check out. So yeah, Nevernight by Kristoff, I'm excited to give this one a go, and what I think is quite interesting about this one as well, Sam was telling me, is it's got sort of little footnotes throughout the book. Now the writing is smaller than I was expecting. I don't know why that matters, but yeah, it's got little footnotes throughout, because instead of diving into this sort of deep world and setting it up from the beginning and giving you lots of kind of exposition, it just sort of makes references to things that have happened in this world in the past that aren't really sort of vital to the story, but if you want to know the history about them, there's a footnote about them. So I think that's going to be quite an interesting reading experience, and seeing how that goes as I'm reading it. So yeah, I'll give this one a go. Then the next book that I bought is a copy of Svetlana Alexievich's The Unwomanly Face of War. Now this is a Penguin Classics reissue of The Unwomanly Face of War, which was actually Svetlana Alexievich's first book, which was published in, I'm just going to check this, 1985 as War's Unwomanly Face. Now Svetlana Alexievich is a Belarusian, well, she says she's not a journalist, she says she just writes witness accounts and puts them in books. But she has been described as the first journalist to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. Now I have got a copy of Secondhand Time, which was published, I've got the Fitzcarraldo edition, and I love Fitzcarraldo editions. So I'm just going to read you a little bit from the French flap of The Unwomanly Face of War. Alexievich set out to write The Unwomanly Face of War, her first book, when she realised that she grew up surrounded by women who had fought in the Second World War, but whose stories were absent from official narratives. She spent years interviewing dozens of Soviet women, captains, tank drivers, snipers, pilots, nurses and doctors, who had experienced the war on the front lines, on the home front and in occupied territories, bringing to light their memories. After completing the manuscript in 1983, Alexievich was not allowed to publish it because it went against the official history of the war. With the dawn of perestroika came a heavily censored version in 1985, which became a huge bestseller in the Soviet Union. So I'm annoyed at myself that I haven't actually read any of Secondhand Time yet, but it is a real chunkster, and it's one that I feel you have to be quite prepared for and in the right mood for. And the same with this one, but the good thing about this one, because it's a series of sort of interviews and stuff, I mean, Secondhand Time is as well, but the way this one is laid out means that it's going to be a dippy one, I think. And it will go quite nicely with another book, which I will mention in a minute, and I will bring this one back to sort of hold up side by side with that one. So the next book that I picked up is, talking of chunksters, I can barely get my tiny hands around this one, Nicola Barker's Darkmans. Now, I have been toying with buying this one pretty much since I started working at Waterstones. It was like one of the first books that I remember sort of seeing on the shelves and being like, oh, I should use my staff discount on this. So I was really, really tempted and finally bit the bullet and bought it the other day. So Nicola Barker, I've not read any of her stuff before, and she's got a new book out called, well, it's Happy, but it's HA in brackets PPY. And there's been a lot of talk about this one, and I thought, well, I'm going to try and get around to this one as well. So it's an uproarious contemporary ghost story. The medieval past takes on a human face and roams the backstreets and bypasses of 21st century Ashford, bringing chaos to the lives of all those it touches. No one is safe, not uptight, upstanding Bede, nor Cain, his laid-back, drug-dealing son, who share a home together but have nothing else in common, bar a mutual obsession with the same woman. Ellen, an enigmatic chiropodist whose unstable husband Dory believes that their only son Fleet has been fathered by the deranged ghost of an evil 500-year-old court jester. Darkmans conjures up a magical yet somehow instantly familiar world in which language crackles like static, twitching with barely containable energy. Past and present mingle and blur, and the lines between fantasy and reality, sanity and madness are continually rubbed out and redrawn, but by whose hand? And again, flicking through this one, it looks like one that again plays with form a little bit, and I'm just always quite intrigued by a book that is printed in a sans serif font, as this one is. So yeah, a real chunkster. I'm not entirely sure when I'm going to get around to this one, but seeing as for like the last 2 years, as I say, since I've been working for Waterstones, I've been toying with getting it. I just thought I should. So if anyone's read any Nicola Barker, I know she's written the Cauliflower as well, and there was another one of hers with a similar jacket to this that I was really, really taken by. We don't have in stock that I'm going to look up. So if anyone's read any Nicola Barker, do tell me. Then another one that I picked up, again, one that I just found as the perils of stacking shelves, is Some Possible Solutions by Helen Phillips. So it's a collection of short stories. What if you knew the exact date of your death? What if your perfect hermaphrodite match existed on another planet? What if your city was filled with doppelgangers of you? In these remarkably inventive stories, Helen Phillips' characters search for solutions to the problem of survival in an irrational, infinitely strange world. We meet a wealthy woman who purchases a high-tech sex toy in the shape of a man, a mother convinced that her children are from another planet, and orphan twin sisters who work as futuristic strippers. As they strive for intimacy and struggle to resolve their fraught relationships with each other and with themselves, we realise these dystopias are uncannily close to our own world. By turns surreal, witty and perplexing, these bewitching stories are ultimately a reflection of our own reality and of the biggest existential questions we all face. So this one appealed because one of the things I like about George Saunders, of course, is one of my favourite writers, particularly his short stories, is they take slightly sort of futuristic and dystopic worlds that are sort of reflections of our own reality and play with those. And it sounds like this is going to do that in a slightly more sort of obvious way, not obvious, explicit way, I don't know. Tired. So yeah, and I'm always excited to add a new book to my short story bookshelf. Short fiction bookshelf. So Some Possible Solutions by Helen Phillips. Then another book I picked up is because actually one of the things I probably haven't mentioned on here is actually another joy of discovery with books, working in a bookshop, is actually talking to customers and books that they've heard of and come in for, and I've maybe not heard of, or just it's passed me by, and they buy a copy of the book and I look at it as I'm selling to them and I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. And one such book, and maybe I should have heard of it, maybe I'm being really dense, is Neither Wolf Nor Dog by Kent Nerburn. And this cover, hello! Again, the Canon Gates, the Canon series are just gorgeous. It's got this matte cover and it's just gorgeous, and it's got the, oh... Yeah, it's a non-fiction book that a customer came in for, and I ran around the shop trying to find our last couple of copies of it, and we had two, so I got one for him and one for me. Against an unflinching backdrop of 90s reservation life in the western Dakotas, Neither Wolf Nor Dog tells the story of two men, one white and one Native American, connected by their own understandings of life, yet struggling to find a common voice. As they journey together through small Indian towns and down forgotten roads, where the whisperings of the wind speak of ancestral voices, these two men will travel beyond myth and stereotype, revealing an America few people ever get to see. Now, for the last few months or so, I've really been wanting to read books that explore sort of Native American culture. I think perhaps, as with a lot of people, a lot more publicity was sort of given to the Native American peoples because of the Dakota Access Pipeline in America. And since then, I've really been wanting to read more about it, about the sort of culture and about modern life and, you know, the theft of their land and of their culture and the erasure of that. But it seems that most books that sort of are about Native American culture, of course, are published in America. So I haven't sort of heard of many. Please do feel free to correct me if I'm entirely wrong, as I likely am. And if anyone's got any recommendations for that kind of book, please do let me know. But this one, yeah, it's a sort of bit of a travel log kind of book. The subtitle's actually On Forgotten Roads with an Indian Elder. Ooh, forward by Robert Plant. Didn't realise that. So yeah, and flicking through and sort of reading a few lines here and there, the sort of contrast in the cultures and upbringings and what people are used to, it just looks really, really intriguing. So I'm not going to leave this one for too long. I know I say that about a lot of books, but I'm really not, because this one just intrigues me so much. So Neither Wolf Nor Dog by Kent Nerburn, On Forgotten Roads with an Indian Elder. Then the next book I picked up probably won't surprise many... I dropped it. The next book I picked up and then dropped and then picked up again won't surprise many of you because, of course, you guys know that I collect these. And, ooh, sorry, I've just seen who's in the next issue of this. Anyway, it's volume 5 of the Penguin Modern Poets series. These gorgeous little books. This one is Sam Riviere, Frederick Seidel and Kathryn Maris. This one's subtitled Occasional Wild Parties. So I have got the other 4 and I flick through them as and when. So they're not ones that I sort of add to like currently reading lists or sort of talk about, and they won't be on wrap-ups for like a good while, because they are ones, because they're split into three poets in each book, and they've got such a range of poems in there. They're really good dip in and dip out ones if you want to just have a bit of poetry in your life. So I've got this one to add to my collection. Now, Sam Riviere, I loved his collection, 81 Austerities, and I've got his second collection, Kim Kardashian's Marriage, but I don't think I've read that one yet. But he's a poet that I really like, so yeah, really excited to get stuck into this one. And as I say, I've just noticed that the next one, volume 6, is going to be Maggie Nelson, hello, Denise Riley and Claudia Rankin. Yes, and I loved both of her books. So yeah, really excited about volume 6, but volume 5 is one that I've picked up and excited to add that to my collection. Then the next book that I picked up is the one that I sort of briefly mentioned earlier when I was talking about Svetlana Alexievich's one. And it's a book that I actually heard about through listening to one of my favourite podcasts, which I'm giving a shout out to, not that, you know, they'll probably hear this, and I think you should all listen to, and that's The Guilty Feminist. Now, it's a podcast that was started by Deborah Frances White, who is a sort of comedian, and she's also like a not a motivational speaker. She does work with corporations about sort of gender inclusion and things like that. Started by her and Sophie Hagen, who's a Danish comedian who I actually love. Sophie Hagen has since sort of left that and has got her own things going on, and Deborah Frances White runs this with guest co-hosts every episode, and at the moment for the last few she's had a relatively regular co-host in Susan Wokoma, who's been in a few E4 telephone programs, let's go with that. So the most recent episode, they were talking about this book, and I was just really intrigued, and luckily we had a copy in work, so I was on my day off listening to the podcast and I had to go into town, so I went in and picked up a copy, and that is Lonely Courage by Rick Stroud. Now, this is a book about the special can't even talk. Right, let's just read you the thing. On the 18th of June 1940, General de Gaulle broadcast from London to his countrymen in France about the catastrophe that had overtaken their nation, the victory of the invading Germans. He declared, "Is defeat final? No. The flame of French resistance must not and will not be extinguished." The Special Operations Executive, SOE, set up by Winston Churchill in 1941, saw its role in France as helping the resistance by recruiting and organising guerrilla fighters, supplying and training them, and then disrupting the invaders by any means necessary. The basic SOE unit was a team of 3, a leader, a wireless operator, and a courier. These teams operated in resistance circuits, and the agents were given random code names. The aim of this work was to prepare for the invasion of Europe by Allied forces and the eventual liberation of France. It was soon decided that women would play a vital role. There were 39 female agents recruited from all walks of life, ranging from a London shop assistant to a Polish aristocrat. What linked them was that they knew France well, were fluent in French, and were prepared to sacrifice everything to help defeat the enemy. The women trained alongside the men, learning how to disappear into the background, how to operate a radio transmitter, and how to kill a man with their bare hands. Once trained, they were infiltrated behind the lines by parachute or tiny aircraft that could land in remote fields. Some of the women went on to lead thousands of resistance fighters, while others were arrested, brutally interrogated, and sent to concentration camps, where they endured torment and death. Lonely Courage tells their story and sheds light on what life was really like for these brave women who tumbled from the sky. I was listening to this podcast, and they had Rick Stroud on, and he was talking about sort of some of the stories that are in here and some that aren't in here. And I mean, the crux of the episode was that Deborah Frances White and Susan McComber went and did a parachute jump in honour of two of the sort of first SOEs who were parachuted behind enemy lines. But it just sounded absolutely fascinating, and having relatively recently read Kegi Carey's Dadland, which deals with a woman who finds out that her dad was basically an SOE and he was a guerrilla fighter in a couple of different wars. That sort of role in resistance fighting, I was like, oh, I was quite intrigued by that when reading Dadland. It was something that really appealed. So I went and picked up a copy of this, and I have started reading it already. I don't often start a book before I haul it, but I've just read a few pages of this already. But it just sounds absolutely fascinating. So yeah, it's one that I think goes quite well with Svetlana Alexievich's The Unwomanly Face of War. Two books that deal with real-life accounts of women who were a key part of warfare, fighting, resistance, whatever you want to call it, whatever umbrella it falls under, whose voices and stories were very much not heard at the time, now being brought to the fore. So these are two that, yeah, very, very important books, going to be dippy ones, but actually Lonely Courage, I'm starting that already, and yeah. So if, as I hope you are, you admire strong women who blaze a trail and who are pioneers and do everything that men can do, you know, when it wasn't a time when women did that, then I think both of these books would be good ones to check out. So yeah, so this one, Lonely Courage by Rick Stroud. Then the last book I'm going to mention, I'm very excited about. I am a huge fan of typewriters. It's probably not really come up on the channel before. I'm a hipster wanker, okay, but I love typewriters. I love the aesthetic, I love the mechanical nature of them. I do use them a bit for when I'm sort of writing because it makes me physically concentrate on what I'm writing, and it's just that, and you can't get distracted by the internet, and there's just a real sort of tactile. Anyway, this isn't a video about typewriters, but I love typewriters, and I've known for a while that Tom Hanks has got like one of the biggest collections of typewriters, and he's a massive fanboy for typewriters, which just endears him to me even more because I love Tom Hanks. And a few years ago I heard that Tom Hanks had a bit of fiction published in The New Yorker, and then I heard that he was working on a collection of short stories that was sort of linked by typewriters and written on typewriters, and I just freaked out a little bit. And so it's been one of my most anticipated releases of this year. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but Tom Hanks, he's adorable, and the typewriter thing, try not to, fangirl. So I was so pleased when the lovely guys at William Heinemann sent me a copy. Now, firstly, I'm going to show you the adorable letter that came with it. Now, I know it's obviously not actually written on a typewriter, and yeah, you know, but look, and it's got the, let's see. But yeah, here's the book. So excited. Like, I love short fiction, I love Tom Hanks, I love typewriters. Basically got my name on it, isn't it? I was so excited about this one. This is not going to be one that sits on, you know, a TBR or a pile for ages without me reading it. I am going to be reading this one very, very soon because, hello. And it's out on the 17th of October this year. And I am going to talk to my managers about making a big old deal of this one in the bookshop. So yeah, Tom Hanks, uncommon type. I mean, I should probably read you some of the blurb, like, yeah. A hectic, funny sexual affair between two best friends. A World War II veteran dealing with his emotional and physical scars. A second-rate actor plunged into sudden stardom and a whirlwind press junket. A small-town newspaper columnist shares his old-fashioned views of the modern world. A woman adjusting to life in a new neighbourhood after her divorce. A rocket ship constructed in a backyard takes 4 friends to the moon and back. A a teenage surfer stumbles into his father's secret life. These are just some of the people and situations that Tom Hanks examines in his first work of fiction, a collection of stories that explores with great affection, humour and insight the human condition and all its foibles. Love that word, foibles! The stories are linked by one thing. In each of them, a typewriter plays a part, sometimes minor, sometimes central. Yeah, very excited about this one. Can you tell? So that is my second July haul video, second and final. I'm gonna buy no more books, even though there's like a couple of days left. Okay, look, I probably will, but screw it, I'll add them on to next month. Actually, no, I can't. That'll be weird. Oh well. So the next video that will be up will be my July wrap-up part 2, which is going to be pretty thin on the ground, I must say. I've not really read much in the last couple of weeks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a July wrap-up part 2 and a little bit of a chat about the Man Book Along list. Since my last wrap-up, I've only read 2 books and I'm halfway through another one that, guys, I'm struggling with. But yeah, I'll talk about that in the next video and just do a bit of a Man Book chat as well. So as usual, have a little chat with me in the comments below, down there, about any of the books that are over there. Have you read any of them? Do you like them? Because you can tell me if you like them. If you didn't like them, keep shtum. Them's the rules. Them's the rules. Is anyone else as excited as me about Tom Hanks' Uncommon Type? Will you be picking up a copy when it comes out in October? Are you as excited as I am to put things in the windows and get really excited about? So yes, I'm not going to do another ridiculously prolonged goodbye like I did in the last video, because I need to go and take some more cold medicine. So I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Have a chat with me in the comments below. See you next time. Goodbye.